The Art of Manliness. Manvotionals. Timeless Wisdom and Advice on Living the 7 Manly Virtues. By Brett and Kate McKay. Narrated by Stephen Hoye. Copyright 2011 by Brett and Kate McKay. This unabridged audiobook is published by arrangement with F&W Media and was produced in the year 2011 by Tantor Media, Incorporated, which holds the copyright thereto. Introduction. In our first book, The Art of Manliness, Classic Skills and Manners for the Modern Man, we presented men with a manual that largely focused on the how-tos, the important skill sets of well-rounded manliness. The book served as a handbook of practical manly know-how. But the other, and even more important side of manliness is the mindset, the cultivation of the inner man. Of course, it's easier to explain what a man should do than what a man should be. To discuss the latter, we must first get at the heart of what true manliness really means. While the definition of manliness has been endlessly discussed and dissected in scholarly tomes, our definition of manliness is actually quite straightforward and ancient. For the ancient Greeks, the ideal life was one filled with eudaimonia. What's eudaimonia? Translators and philosophers have given different definitions for it, but the best way to describe eudaimonia is the attainment of flourishing through, as Aristotle put it, doing and living well. Greek philosophers believed that eudaimonia was achieved through the practice of arete. Translated as virtue, arete is better understood as excellence, and was sometimes used interchangeably with andreia, or manliness. The man of arete maximized his full potential in body, mind, and soul. Despite setbacks and challenges, he effectively used his abilities to fulfill his life's purpose and achieve a real and lasting legacy. Thus, for the ancient Greeks, manliness meant being the best man you could be. The Latin word for manliness, or masculine strength, was virtus. This is where we get the English word virtue. The Roman idea of virtus at first centered on valor and courage, and later came to encompass other qualities such as fortitude, industry, and dutifulness. So for the ancient Romans, manliness meant living a life of virtue. So our definition of manliness, like that of the ancients, is simple: striving for virtue, honor, and excellence in all areas of your life, fulfilling your potential as a man, and being the absolute best brother, friend, husband, father, and citizen you can be. Living a life of virtuous excellence is harder than learning how to tie a tie or start a fire, but no other pursuit will be as supremely rewarding. At this point, some of you may be thinking, wait, shouldn't women be striving to live the virtuous life as well? Absolutely. There are 2 ways to define manhood. One way is to say that manhood is the opposite of womanhood. The other is to say that manhood is the opposite of childhood. The former seems to be quite popular, but it often leads to a superficial kind of manliness. Men who subscribe to this philosophy end up cultivating a manliness concerned with outward characteristics. They worry about whether X, Y, or Z is manly, and whether the things they enjoy and do are effeminate, because many women also enjoy them. We advocate the latter philosophy. Manhood is the opposite of childhood and concerns one's inner values. A child is self-centered, fearful, and dependent. A man is bold, courageous, respectful, independent, and of service to others. Thus a boy becomes a man when he matures and leaves behind childish things. Likewise, a girl becomes a woman when she matures into real adulthood. Both genders are capable of and should strive for virtuous human excellence. When a woman lives the virtues, that is womanliness. When a man lives the virtues, that is manliness. Women and men strive for the same virtues, but often attain them and express them in different ways. The virtues will be lived and manifested differently in the lives of sisters, mothers, and wives than in brothers, husbands, and fathers. Two different musical instruments playing the exact same notes will produce two different sounds. The difference in the sounds is one of those ineffable things that is hard to describe with words, but easy to discern. Neither instrument is better than the other. In the hands of the diligent and dedicated, each instrument plays music that fills the spirit and adds beauty to the world. A man's path to virtuous excellence begins with his pursuit of the 7 manly virtues. These virtues, if diligently sought after and lived, will help a man unlock his fullest power and potential. The 7 virtues are manliness, courage, industry, resolution, self-reliance, discipline, honor. These 7 virtues can be striven for by any man in any situation, rich or poor, young or old, married or single. From the soldier to the civilian, from the corporate warrior to the stay-at-home dad, the path of virtuous excellence is open to and vital for all men. Why just 7, and why these particular virtues? Shouldn't a man develop virtues like compassion and humility? Of course. Being a complete man means nurturing your tender side as well. These 7 virtues simply form the pole stars in the great constellation of manliness, providing men a sense of direction and leading them on the path to greatness. They are the virtues that have most called to the masculine spirit throughout the ages, and which form the backbone of a man's pursuit of the virtuous life, a firm foundation upon which all the other virtues can be built. We've organized the book into 7 chapters, one for each of the 7 manly virtues. Each chapter is filled with excerpts from books, speeches, letters, and poems that span the ages and are designed to help you better understand the virtues and inspire you to live them more fully. We've also included selections from the timeless works of ancient philosophers like Aristotle and Epictetus, virile speeches from Theodore Roosevelt and Winston Churchill, and manly poems from Rudyard Kipling and Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. You'll also find excerpts from success manuals from the 19th and early 20th centuries scattered throughout Manvotionals. Unlike much of the success and self-improvement literature pumped out today, which focuses primarily on positive thinking and superficial tips on becoming rich, muscular, and suave, success books from the turn of the 20th century concentrated on developing a man's character. Our great-grandfathers believed that if a man worked sufficiently hard on forging a noble character, success in all the other areas of his life would naturally follow. Moreover, the idea of success that many of these books aspired to wasn't necessarily fame and fortune, but rather a life well lived, filled with close relationships with family and friends, contentment with simple pleasures, and the peace of mind that comes from living a good, honest life. For those hearing literature from this genre and period for the first time, the earnest tone of the authors may seem a bit jarring. Living in a very cynical age, we're not used to such unabashed, guileless sincerity. But it will grow on you. Trust us. Authors of this time had a knack for writing in a way that gets right to the heart of the matter and offers true insight. Also, you'll probably notice that our selections come from the annals of Western thought. While we understand and appreciate that all cultures have inspiring views on manliness, we decided to focus on the Western tradition of masculinity for a couple of reasons. First, it narrowed our field of choices, providing us some much-needed focus, and making the already incredibly difficult job of narrowing the vast field of potential entries a bit easier. And second, as the book will primarily be listened to by those living in Western countries, we thought it would be more interesting and engaging to explore the history and meaning of manliness within the culture in which listeners have been immersed. Finally, all the selections were chosen simply on the basis of readability, strength, and wisdom. The selections are long enough to impart profound insight and short enough to remain engaging. Too many anthologies like this one end up gathering dust on the coffee table. This book is not designed to make you feel good simply for purchasing it. It is not an ornamental piece for your bookshelf. It is designed to be listened to and pondered. Each selection was thoughtfully and carefully chosen to hit you right in the heart and inspire you to be a better man. We challenge you to listen to at least one selection every morning, allowing yourself to meditate upon it during the day. We promise that if you do this, you will grow as a man and will walk a little taller and be a little better by the time you finish the audiobook. Author's note: selections have been edited for readability and length. Chapter 1. Manliness. Mention the word manliness these days, and you'll probably be greeted with snorts and giggles. Many people today associate manliness with cartoonish images of men sitting in their man caves, drinking beer and watching the big game. Or, just as likely, they don't think much about manliness at all, chalking it up to the mere possession of a certain set of anatomy. Whatever image they have in mind when you mention manliness, it isn't usually positive, and it probably has nothing to do with virtue. But if you search the annals of Western thought, you'll discover that this shallow conception of manliness is relatively new. For over 2,000 years, many of the world's great thinkers explored and celebrated the subject of manliness, imagining it not as something silly or biologically inherent, but as the culmination of the virtues as expressed in the life of a man. Manliness was considered a virtue in and of itself, the attainment of which had to be actively pursued. The epic poetry of the ancient Greeks praised the manliness of their heroes, while their philosophy linked virtuous manhood to the health and longevity of society. Throughout the 18th century, great statesmen tied the cultivation of true manliness to the success of emerging experiments in liberty and democracy. And into the early 1900s, writers encouraged men to embrace manliness as the crown of character and virtue. This nearly 2,000-year-old tradition of extolling manliness as a necessary and laudatory aspiration came to an end in the mid-20th century. Discussion of character and virtue fell out of favor in general, and talking about manliness as a specific virtue disappeared during our cultural experiment with gender neutrality. Praising manliness became verboten. Disparaging it did not, and thus manliness became fodder for broad sitcoms and juvenile magazines. We'd like to bring back the idea of manliness as a real, distinct virtue, a goal which all men should orient their lives toward. The following chapter highlights some of the best writings we've found on the topic of manliness itself. The selections, ranging from ancient Greek poetry to passages from 19th-century success manuals, show that, far from being the hazy concept it is seen as today, the definition of true manliness has been clear and consistent for thousands of years. The selections are designed not only to explain what true, honorable manliness looks like and consists of, but also to resonate on a deeper level, giving you an idea of what manliness feels like. We hope that as you listen to this chapter, you will be inspired to place the ideal of manliness ever before you. Wanted, a Man. From Pushing to the Front, 1911. By Orison Swett Marden. Over the door of every profession, every occupation, every calling, the world has a standing advertisement. Wanted, a man. Wanted, a man who will not lose his individuality in a crowd, a man who has the courage of his convictions, who is not afraid to say no, though all the world say yes. Wanted, a man who is larger than his calling, who considers it a low estimate of his occupation to value it merely as a means of getting a living. Wanted, a man who sees self-development, education and culture, discipline and drill, character and manhood in his occupation. Wanted, a man of courage who is not a coward in any part of his nature. Wanted, a man who is symmetrical and not one-sided in his development, who has not sent all the energies of his being into one narrow specialty and allowed all the other branches of his life to wither and die. Wanted, a man who is broad, who does not take half views of things, a man who mixes common sense with his theories, who does not let a college education.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?